What I want to speak about today is an inyan that has a lot to do with nowadays, and it is an inyan that the Puskei Sfarad, the Chachmei Ma'arav, didn't speak about extensively. However, it is a subject that is going to become more and more relevant, which is the subject of electricity on Shabat. So the subject of electricity on Shabat. It's a very broad subject, and it is a subject that has many ramifications. One specific she'ela I want to speak about is a relatively new question that, in my opinion, is going to become more and more relevant as the years go by. They have started in different areas in the world. They have installed something called a digital water meter. What does that mean? They're replacing the old water meters we have in our home that detect how much water we use and how much water we don't use. They have something called a digital water meter, which means that when you open up the tap in your house and you cause the water to run through the stream, so that digitally the numbers start recording on the water meter, and effectively you are causing electricity to be turned on and writing and whatever else you have electricity and writing that is being done on Shabbat. And the question is, would that be allowed? So in truth, just to define what the questions we have at hand over here is that digital writing on the screen is not at all simple whether that is called writing on Shabbat or not. It's not writing on a piece of paper. It's a bunch of little numbers that are flashing on the screen. Is that considered writing or not? Rav Eliashiv is of the opinion. Eliashiv was of the opinion that somebody asked him that it's just lights flashing on the screen 60 times per second. He said it doesn't matter. What you see is what you get, and since for you it looks like it's for you to the naked eye it is writing, you are chayav. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was of the opinion that no, it's not considered writing on Shabbat because a computer screen, because it is not real letters, it's not real ink, it's just a bunch of light that's being portrayed on the screen with the megapixels, but it's not really like a flashlight, but it's not really writing. This was the opinion of these Gedolim. Even if you want to say that it is mutar, I think still that they agree that there is some type of Isur de Rabbanan. If that would be the case, then obviously it's much more lenient than if you would hold that the writing is only midrabanan. Nevertheless, there are other questions involved. When you are actually causing the digital letters to be written, you are causing new electricity to be used. So is that new electricity a problem? Is another question, because there was a big discussion why electricity is forbidden. When you're turning on a light bulb, so that you're causing fire to go inside the light bulb, a tavara, that would be forbidden. But let's say you turn on a neon light bulb that doesn't have any starter on it. The new ones don't have a starter on it. Or just for argument's sake, a radio that you turn on the electricity. So there the Chazon Ish says that you'll still violate a Torah prohibition of boneh, because when you close a circuit, you are bringing two wires one next to each other, positive and a negative. You are making a circuit that the electricity could flow. You are building a circuit that would be prohibited. Whereas the opinion of Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, that's not considered building. That's considered it's made to be used back and forth. It's just like closing a door on Shabbat. Why isn't closing a door considered boneh? You have an open hole in the wall that you're closing the door. Rather, it's because it's being used. So Shlomo said also over here, you're just using it. You're not really building. And he held that it's not called Isur Deoraita of boneh. Rather, it's Isur de Rabbanan of Molid. Nevertheless, It is molid that you are creating something new. Nevertheless, Rosh Hashanah said we have to be choshesh for the Chazon Ish. But that's only when we are closing a circuit. What would happen if you just increase currency? For example, let's say the radio is on. We're not talking about that you're adding on any lights when you're turning up the volume. We're talking about the old types of radio. That you have the dial, and you're just increasing electricity. Is it prohibited or not? So it's a very big mahloket nowadays. Hagbarat zerem, we call it. Is increasing electricity permitted or not permitted? The opinion of some is that when you are increasing electricity, that also is creating something. And others, they say in the name of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, understood that that's not forbidden. That's not forbidden on Shabbat because there's already electricity running. You're just adding on more electricity that would not be forbidden. So that's just to open up what the question is over here. So according to those who hold that it's called your writing on Shabbat, and according to those who hold that increasing electricity is prohibited, you have problems over here on Shabbat of opening the digital water meter because you are creating writing and the flow is. So you wouldn't be allowed to open up your water tap on Shabbat with these digital water meters. And there are many that are being installed. I know in the north of Israel there are many that are being installed. In New York and in Lakewood, I heard there are those digital water meters being installed. So the Bishalom Misas in Tivot Shemesh, Orach Chaim Siman Dalid, and also in Shemesh Umagen Helek Dalid Siman Nun Vav discusses the Shabbat clocks, that you want to make the light go on later than what it is supposed to go on, and you're not going to turn on anything. It's just the dials. You're going to move the pegs, and it's going to be able to make it longer. So we have a rule, or let's say you would want to make the time shorter to go off earlier. So Rabbi Shalom Misas was of the opinion. He argued on Rav Avadia on this, and he says that you're allowed even, let's say the light's supposed to go at 9 o'clock, you're allowed to make it go out at 8 o'clock. Rav Avadia says, no, you're being mekarev kibuyo, you're making it go off earlier, you're not allowed. Rabbi Shalom Misas said, why should it be forbidden? There's nothing going on right away. It's called a gram kibui. It's called a grama. The concept of grama means that you're only not allowed to do a direct action on Shabbat. Gemara Masechet Shabbat, the Kuf Chav says, grama hu de asur. Ma'aseh hu de asur. Ha-grama shari. Only a direct action is forbidden, but an indirect action, a grama, is permitted. So Rabbi Shalom Misas therefore said that he doesn't understand why Rav Avadia says you're only allowed to make the Shabbat clock go from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. You're able even to make it go earlier from 8 o'clock to 7 o'clock because it's not happening right away. So anything that doesn't happen right away, that's called a grama, and that would be permitted. There's a Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin, Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Bet, that says like this: somebody who tied his friend up, v'shakir ale bitka demaya, and he removed a dam, a barrier of water, and he killed his friend with the action of removing the dam, and the water started flowing out. The Gemara says like this: Koach Rishon, if he killed him with the first flow, is forbidden. Koach Sheni, but the second flow, Shari, is permitted. So only the first flow that killed is forbidden, but the second flow is permitted. The second flow is permitted. It's not from you anymore. So the question is, when somebody opens up this tap of water, so he's letting out the water, but then there's going to be new water that's going to be coming in, and that's going to activate the digital water meter. Is that called a grama, or we would call it a koach sheni, a second wind, the second flow? The second flow is not the original flow. So we know that regarding, is that considered your action regarding killing someone? The Gemara says that it's allowed. But would that also be considered legabe Shabbat? Also, would that be considered also an action that is permitted? So the poskim say, and like he says, that anything The definition of Grama is anything that doesn't happen right away, something that's obvious in the poskim. And over here, since when you open up the water, you have to wait till the new water comes in. It's the second flow. So you're right, it happens almost immediately. But since it's the second flow, then it wouldn't be a problem. So because it would be considered a grama. According to Sfaradim, grama is allowed on Shabbat. According to Ashkenazim, it's still assuming the Rabbanan, but it makes things much lighter. Now, you could also add another reason why it's allowed, because over here, you don't have kavanah. You don't have intention that the digital numbers keep on going. You don't have kavanah. Even if when they actually activate and the numbers go on, you're going to say, well, it's a psik reshit. Your own davar she'enu mikaven, something that you don't have kavanah on Shabbat, is only allowed if it's not for sure going to happen. But if it's for sure going to happen, it's called a psik reshit. It's forbidden. Nevertheless, we have a rule that psik reshit de lo nichale is allowed. Psik reshit that you don't really want is allowed. Is the fact that you don't that those numbers are being written, is it something that you want or something that you don't want? So Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach has a letter, and Rabbi Miller from Toronto also went with this thinking that you don't really want the numbers on the screen. You don't care. For all you care, they'll tell you that they don't know the numbers. You'll have to pay less. For you, it's better that they don't know the numbers because you don't have any interest in knowing the numbers. It's for them, and really for you, you'd rather that you don't have the numbers at all. Others will argue and they'll say no. At the end of the day, you want to know exactly how much you pay because if they overcharge you, you could prove them wrong. On the other hand, you could say, what do you mean? If they don't know the numbers, so they'll have to charge me less. So it's a big discussion whether you could call that a psik resha de lo nichale, if it's something that's flowing through and you wouldn't want or not. There's a letter of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach written in Shnat Tav Shin Nun Daled, which is a good 20 years ago, about digital water meters. It seems to be they had such a system of the digital water meters, and in there he wrote that it is a psik resha de lo nichale. Now we're only talking about digital water meters that actually right away they start being activated. But if they only activate after 100 liters or 10 liters, then you have another reason to say that it's allowed because you're not sure it's for sure going to happen, and it's called a safek psik resha. You're not sure if it's for sure happening or not. You don't know if the meter is about to be turned on, if it's at 99.9 liters or at 0, and then with your opening the tap and closing. So it should be considered a safek psik resha, that the Taz understood that it's permitted. Some say that it's even better than a safek psik resha because since there's no way of you ever knowing where the water is holding, so in other words, where for sure the numbers are going to change or not. So it's called the davar she'enu mitkaven, and it's allowed. It's not called the psik resha. So these are a couple of reasons why one would permit water meters on Shabbat. The reason would be that number one, it's like Rabbi Shalom said. It's even though he didn't speak about digital water meters, in a similar case, he said that grama is allowed any time that you would do a grama, that it doesn't happen right away. And over here, since it's a koach sheni, it's a second wind that's coming, so that's not called right away. It would be permitted. That's one reason. Another reason we said it could be it's a psik resha de lo nichale. You don't really want the numbers. And the third reason that we mentioned is that some water meters you don't know when it's going to happen or not. It's not going to be by all water meters, by some water meters, now, and then it would be permitted. Now, just to close, we have to realize that this is only talking about water meters that are digital. But if they are analog, they don't have that problem. There's a much less of a problem. So that wouldn't be an issue. In Toronto, what they have that is analog, but it's attached to a box that once in a while will send the messages to the city. That you don't know when it's going to happen, so for sure it's called the davar she'enu mitkaven, and that would be allowed. Chazak u'baruch.